Hello, folks. My name is William DeBastard, and I would like to welcome each and every one of you to the first episode of Defining the Occult. The occult. Few terms provoke in the human imagination such morbid fears and fascinations. But the questions that many people have: what is the occult? Is the occult evil? Or is it a science? A type of science that is hidden? For hidden is the definition of the occult. It seems that there is quite a broad terminology of differing subjects, philosophies, and religious paths that are all tied into the occult. The occult encompasses a broad network of differing philosophies that have certain similarities like unto one another, though many of them are completely different in their system of delivery. There were at one time certain Christian churches, even the Protestants themselves, that were considered to be occult. Science, as we know it today, astrology, weather prediction, many physical sciences we know were all within, at one time, the realm of the occult. Take a brief moment to discuss paganism and neo-paganism. Paganism is traditionally the various mythos and epic sagas, in some cases poetic mythical sagas that were recorded by various cultures, such as classical Greece, Rome, Latin countries, no doubt the Germanic Celts and the Norse Celts, as well as Scandinavians, Picts and Gaels of Ireland and Scotland. Um, all of these were pagan uh, peoples. They had a system of belief that we call today polytheism. Polytheism is the belief in multiple gods, numerous gods, many gods, basically more than three. Now, there's many Christians that would claim they are monotheism or monotheistic, meaning that they believe in one God and one God only. However, I find many Christians and Catholics to be tritheistic or quadtheistic, meaning they are fourfold, believe in fourfold deity or threefold deity. Example being Father, Son, Holy Spirit. If you want to include the Virgin Mary in that, you can. And the Catholics have many saints. You can just go on down the list. So basically, most of your early saints equivocated to a pagan deity. Catholicism, in its earliest forms, was no doubt a compromise between Roman paganism and the people that still held on to their traditional native faiths and beliefs, going back thousands of years. Uh, However, with the advent of Christianity, they couldn't just shove it down people's throats as they do in Jackson, Mississippi. If you're going to have a Wiccan gathering in the park, you don't necessarily just burn a bunch of witches as your first initial statement of kindness and mercy and an all benevolent, loving God who means nothing but the best for humanity. It's not sending a very good message. So Catholicism allowed, and the Cathars as well, which we'll get to that here soon. But it allowed them to compromise pagan beliefs. In fact, the Christian Mass the Catholic Mass practiced in some churches still in Latin today is no doubt a morph on a ancient pagan ceremony that took place thousands of years ago, predating Christ. Of course, you've heard of the Black Mass practiced by deviants or Satanists, which are not deviant, but however often get aligned into that same type of crackpot bullshit. Um, we'll move on from that for a while. Let's just say that paganism, um, by and large, was eradicated by the churches. The Anglo-Saxon people of Germany and England at one time were heavily pagan, thoroughly pagan peoples, believing in polytheistic traditions, um, going back for thousands of years. In many places, when the Christian missionaries and conquerors even came forward, they would put people to death by the thousands. Um, Countless untold numbers of Anglo-Saxon and Celtic peoples were absolutely mowed down and slayed if they chose to cling to their pagan beliefs beyond a certain level that was an afforded allowance by mandated by either the Celtic or the Catholic Church itself. Um, Catholicism, a lot of Protestants and other branches of Christianity and Judaism would absolutely argue it's not true Christianity um, at all. However, Catholicism uh, does have this much on them. It was the first, the absolute, um, except for the Coptics of Egypt, they were the first Christian church, and they did actually have within their ranks a disciple of Christ. Um, More than one, actually. So uh, they were the initiators of all Christendom. Uh, say what you will about them. We'll leave the Catholics alone from there. We kind of cover paganism and Christianity together, and that's because they're so closely linked. And pagans used to put Christians to death, and it just wasn't. But maybe 50 years later, role reversal, haha. Christians are putting them to death and continue to do so for the next 2,000 years in some parts of the world. It's even still happening today. So, talk about holding a grudge. Anyhow, we'll leave the pagan thing alone. A pagan being more a belief in more than one God. Uh, Monotheism being the belief in one God. Tritheism, three. Quadism, four. Getting into the realm of Christianity, Judaism, monotheism. Islam would be dual theism because they believe in Muhammad the Prophet and Allah. And so none of these so-called monotheistic religions are truly monotheistic if you look at the broad perspective of the structure of what they believe in their holy books and traditions. And I hate to bust everybody's bubble, but I'll call it out. The absolute earliest forms of occult practice lie in what is called animism. Animism is deifying the natural creatures we find in nature to a certain level where we relate to them in a religious perspective. Now, animism is practiced in many, many different branches of what is called shamanism. Shamanism is basically a tribalistic, adaptive, uh, philosophical, self healing sort of thing. And shamanism has some very, very early roots right alongside animism. And we can trace uh, many of these practices, these earliest practices of shamanic and animistic evidence, all the way back to Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and very early forms of mankind that other forms of humanoids, that we hold some of their genetic properties, as many of them are our ancestors. It's been genetically proven that we do carry 4 to 8% Neanderthal blood. Most of the races upon the face of the earth. So we also know that the Neanderthals buried flowers with their dead, and they had ceremonial practices, certain observances. We find this through the archaeological record and the data that has been gathered that controlled uh, organizations that control documented science, what is fact and what is not, such as the Smithsonian and other institutions. What they allow through. We can see even through that the Neanderthal were far more advanced than previously discovered. And so we're dealing with shamanism and animism being the absolute earliest form of any religious or philosophical practice upon the planet, going back to time immemorial, beyond any record, even perhaps beyond the current evolutionary state of humankind itself. The long range effects of the persecution of paganism would lead to revival movements after the persecutions of the Middle Ages subsided and the religious authorities began to grow lax in their vigilance on witchcraft and prosecuting, torturing, and executing people for it. Over time, these revival movements would lead into movements like Wicca and prior to Wicca folkism. These can be considered neo-pagan. Neo-pagan has as many branches as Wicca and other religions. However, certain people exclusively label themselves by each of these differing terms for various reasons and for no reason at all. As you will see, the world of the occult can be quite confusing. So, what is high magic, ceremonial magic, evocation, conjuration, necromancy? These are the subjects of the classical grimoires of the Middle Ages, in which ceremonial magicians, as they are called, apply their wares for occultic knowledge, going through several processes of initiation, all the way unto death, having complex formulas, some taking hours, rituals and ceremonies that are so complex they can take weeks, days, months, even years to perform. Some would say, in the darkest of grimoires, there are diabolical formulae for humans and animals to be sacrificed. A very, very sinister side of magic lay behind the work of the grimoire. In an occultist view like myself, many of the formulae are just downright sick. One reason some of the darker grimoire formulas are found to be so reprehensible is they require that pain or suffering or even death be inflicted upon other living creatures, in particular that of animals. Certain voodoo formulae and other related religions do this practice even today and defend their right to continue on performing their age-old religious sacrificial ceremonies so that they may contact what they view to be deified links.